Hey folks, welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. The NASDAQ falling for the second day in a row. Dow Jones moving to the downside pretty fast too. We're off to start one of the worst beginnings in the market in several years. You want to know why? Stay tuned for the Rebel's Edge. Yeah, down 200 plus for the Dow, Pete, 130 for the NASDAQ. You know what they say, just like when they were talking about the deficit, $1 billion here and $1 billion there, pretty soon it's real money. 200 points in the NASDAQ, couple days in a row, pretty soon it feels real, doesn't it?
It starts to feel real pretty quickly, I'll tell you that, especially if you're one of those folks that's been chasing this Magnificent Seven all year, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, cowboy. It's a wake-up call.
Absolutely. Well, that is Pete Najarian. He has returned from the Cayman Islands, and he and I are going to deliver Macro Minute, fantastic futures, some stocks that you guys are probably already interested in. You might be even more interested because one of them had unusual activity yesterday or very recently. And of course, Jared is handling all of the dancing bulls, bears, sound effects, clocks, everything you see down the right side of the screen. That's all Jared. So Pete, let's dive in and say Macro Minute. It seems like people might not be as committed as they were to lower interest rates are right around the corner, Pete, and Bitcoin ETF right around the corner. Both of those were why we screamed to the upside at the end of 2023, and yet they're a little doubtful today.
Well, John, everybody wants to call it the Santa Claus rally, right? And I see our good friend Bob Pisani, who does a fantastic job, by the way, but he's one of those that's in that camp of, well, the Santa Claus rally. I have a different version of that. This past year, I think we had the turkey and Santa Claus rally together, because you go back to November, that's when it really kicked in, right? November 1st, we started rocketing to the upside. December, we just continued on, and then it became tax time. And you pointed that out yesterday with Liz Clayman when we were on there with the Clayman countdown, Fox Business. It was great. And I think you were exactly spot on, John. Those names that just rocketed to the upside, well, you get into the first of the year, bang, 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 bang. Why are they doing that? Tax reasons. Makes all the sense in the world.
And it creates opportunity. Yep. Because obviously some of you weren't in those stocks and you'd like to get in them, but you didn't want to jump on that momentum in late December when there were no sellers. It was a seller's strike. So what do? You wait. You get into some of those stocks that you liked, but you didn't have to pay $200 a share for Apple. You can get it a lot cheaper than that. NVIDIA, Tesla, all these stocks. But anyway, I agree with you, Pete. It's tax planning can be a good thing, of course, matching up your winners and losers so that you can take your tax liability down. But there's also some opportunities created by the people doing that. Yeah. All right, let's talk about fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
I'm going to say, Pete, that the Red Sea and what's been going on there with the Houthi rebels, the fact that Maersk, the largest shipper through the Red Sea, they run those huge container ships and everything, folks. They're basically saying no mas. You know, we're not going to be doing that. Crude oil is moving up better than 2% today, maybe heading towards a 3% rally. That's my future, Pete.
Yeah, the Houthi rebels, as you called them, thank God it wasn't the market rebels, because we're having a great time here. We're not part of that whole crap. But I will tell you this, John, what's interesting is we keep kind of bouncing up now the last day or so, including today, over that 14 level in volatility. So I'm going to give you that as my fantastic future. I'm looking at the VIX. I see that spike up. It's pulled off of that 14 just a little bit, but a 7.5% or better move to the upside out of the VIX today. Again, definitely something I think people should at least be aware of as they're kind of navigating their way through the markets.
Yeah, it would be smart to do that. And hopefully some of you folks were listening when Pete was talking about 11 VIX. which it hit last week. And yeah, it's moved up 3 points. It's probably not running back to 20 anytime soon. But the 10-year moving back over 392, Pete, is kind of a wake-up call for a lot of the folks that were really pushing hard on, yeah, the Fed's going to make a move and it's the end of January. You take a look at the CME futures, folks, and it tells a different story. All right, let's talk about this one, Pete. DYN, Dyne Therapeutics. They hosted a virtual day today. This is one of those where, of course, they're going to tell you how their clinical data has come out. Well, DYN's clinical data was pretty darn good. And the stock exploded to the upside. It exploded and opened at 18 after a 13 close yesterday. That's a huge percentage move. Then it slammed all the way down into the 12s, Pete, but it's making a climb back up, and it's up 27% right now. Wow, you wanted some volatility? You got it in DYN.
Yeah, you get it a lot of the time in these biotech type names, John. That name absolutely went, and look at the volumes. And I know you saw this as well. First hour of the day, 11 million shares traded. The full day usually is about 660,000. That gives you a little bit of an idea. People were definitely involved. This is a stock that has an incredibly high short interest. That's one of the factors, I think, playing into this whole thing. Market cap's not that big, so folks that are big can kind of manipulate things around a little bit. It's 800 million, but obviously compared to a lot of names out there that are in the multi-billions, this is a much smaller name. So there's a lot of factors, I think, behind this whole thing. Also, the fact that it did hit 52-week highs, the cash burn is high. They've got to get their drugs to market, their therapeutics to market. I think that they're on the right path, but they do have a fairly small pipeline, John. So there are going to be some days where this stock is going to rip to the upside. I think there's also going to be days where this stock gets hammered pretty good to the downside. So it'll be interesting to see how the shorts shake out today and in the next week or two.
Yeah, although, like you already said, impressive bounce from 12 to 16 and a half like that. That's pretty good percentage-wise. That's a big move. All right, let's talk about BTDR. That's BitDeer Tech. Now, they're engaged in mining of Bitcoins. And as you guys know, you have to solve a complex mathematical formula. You have to basically prove that Bitcoin hasn't been spent or stolen or anything else. And the persons that win in that get a Bitcoin. And they get fewer and fewer Bitcoins, by the way, because that's the way Bitcoin was designed. But this is not just them. It's not just Mara. It's not just Riot. It's not just HUT, but they're all moving down today. And why would that be, Pete? Well, take a look at the Bitcoin graph. I mean, Bitcoin was almost 46,000 just a day or so ago. And now it traded through 41,000 this morning. I mean, that Bitcoin graph is pretty darn ugly. And when you see a graph that's going from, the left to the right and falling that severely like that one right there, that tells you a lot about people thinking maybe it was a little overbought.
Yeah, Bitcoin, I'll tell you, John, has been extremely volatile to your point. And there are points where it's kind of paused. It paused at 37,000 for a long time, then kind of just shifted around here and there. And then we had that big run up to 45,000. Now we've been shifting around a little bit here. So a lot of movement, a lot of volatility. This has been something, it's not for the faint at heart. I would also say those beta names, as we call them oftentimes, these miners out there. Just to give you an idea, John, Marathon has a beta of 5, Riot of 4, and Coinbase has which I know is not a miner, but transactional, that's a 3. But I look at this one in BitDeer, it's a little bit smaller, but it's going to follow along with these violent moves that are coming out of Bitcoin. There's no doubt about it. So this is a name, as you just pointed out. I mean, this thing is moving all over the place. And as of right now, not having such a great day necessarily, but you know what? All it needs is one more day or another day from now in the next week or so, start moving to the upside. I think BitDeer will probably take off as well. You just have to be cautious, I think, in all of these miners because the moves are extraordinary each and every day.
Yeah, but it's a lot, Pete, like when people hear that Warren Buffett bought Bank America at a certain price, $5 a share or wherever, and they think, God, I wish I had the money, I would do that too. Well, you can. You could buy Berkshire Hathaway stock. It's not the only holding. I understand that. But the same thing is true here. Until there's a Bitcoin ETF, those of you who have never traded Bitcoin have to wait until you finally get comfortable with a Bitcoin ETF that might be coming soon. But otherwise, you need a hardware wallet, software wallet. You need to know about MetaMask and all these other things. And that keeps a lot of people from getting in. But if you want, you could be right in there with Pete in Marathon, in Riot, in Hut 8, in MicroStrategy. All those are going to move with Bitcoin. All right, Pete, let's talk about this one because you know how we love to pat ourselves on the back, folks. We'll take the heat when we're wrong, too. But yes, patting ourselves on the back, SoFi. Why? Because we had unusual activity in this name. What does that mean if you're a new viewer? Well, that means that if you look at the top of the screen there, on the 20th, just days before Christmas, they were buying 20,000 of the February 8 puts for 44 cents. Well, the stock was almost $10 a share on that day. Now you fast forward to today, it's down 12.5%. Bang! That's a big payoff for anybody who owned puts. And Pete and I like to buy them at the money, folks. We like buying at the money puts when we're buying a put, or at the money calls if we're betting on the upside with a call. Why is that? It doesn't have to make an extraordinary move for you to make money. And, I think if you guys would like, by the way, if you don't understand some of what I just described, by all means, go to itsnotanoption.com. Probably been seeing these commercials on TV. Itsnotanoption.com. There's those two handsome guys. Itsnotanoption.com. You get a free book. You can claim your free book by going to itsnotanoption.com. You get our book. It'll give you a lot of insights into how we trade and how you might decide to trade with derivatives. We'd always say, make sure you understand them before you trade them. But there are ways you can take the risk way down using options, not using stocks. Because if you were long SoFi today coming in and you had a stop order, guess where you got executed? At the bottom, because that just becomes a market order. But if you had a put and you were betting on the downside, you could cash in. If you had a call, and if we were wrong and you were in a call, all you could lose is what you paid for that call. You're not losing that 12% on the stock move. So anyway, SoFi gets a downgrade, right, Pete?
Yeah, and I think that really was the story of the day. This is a stock that's been all over the map. You and I both know that. And, anybody who puts their name on a stadium, they're always going to be somebody that you're going to be watching very closely, because it seems like those are always the ones that are moving around, John, at a very high pace. And SoFi, beautiful stadium. We all know that. When you look at the forward PE of a SoFi, by the way, 175, this is a stock that's definitely going to be volatile. It's going to be interesting. And KBW came out with that dropping of their price target from 7.5 to 6.5, and they went to an underperform. All the rest of that just pressed this stock down. And maybe somebody had a little inkling about that coming, John. Who knows? But whatever the case is, those puts that you pointed out there, that became something very, very valuable very quickly when you really look at things. And an amazing run to the downside, not just from the downgrade. I think the combination of the downgrade and just the movements that we're seeing in the market today.
Yeah, well, the market's soft, and this one's softer than the market. All right, let's take a look, Pete, at Flex, F-L-E-X. Finvestors, that would be an investor that has bought shares of Flex, have been pretty pleased with themselves. They're probably patting themselves on the back, Pete, because this stock has had a return of 300% over the last 5 years. Now, that's a pretty damn good return, I'd say. So it's a steady company. Today, they get another pop because basically they've been selling or spinning off this thing, their interest in Next Tracker. So they're going to be getting the rewards of making a nice investment and passing that on. People will get shares in that company, as well as Flex made a lot of money on the trade on the way up there. So good news both ways, Pete. Class A stock is looking pretty good, and pretty nice start of the year for Flex investors.
Yeah, they got a nice big pop a few weeks ago. They get another pop. They've been hanging up there, John. It's pretty interesting to see how this stock has been trading. Another Singapore name. So we've got two on the board today that we're talking about here. But the consistency of their earnings has been there as well, John. Some of the beats that they've had over the last 4 quarters, absolutely very, very impressive. So however you want to break this one down, but this spinoff, now that it's complete, gives them a lot of flexibility. It should be pretty interesting, I think. Is this something you want to stick with? I don't know. I think a lot of the really good news seems to be there. I think I'd be looking for something else, but everybody's going to have their choice on how they want to react. Nonetheless, a really nice run over the last few weeks for this name.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pete, we're going to hit your sports segment now, Pete's Red Zone Sports, but I got to ask you because I saw this video today, this reel, and it made me think sooner or later, one of these heads of the NFL, it wasn't Tagliabue, maybe it'll be Roger Goodell that actually says, you know what, the refs screwed it up so bad, and this is the last play of the game, which has happened against your Vikings, Pete. Kansas City's had several of these this year, good side as well as bad side for Kansas City. Isn't it about time that if you know it was a bad call, that you basically, especially since it's the last play of the game, it's not like you say, oh, well, that call in the third quarter really resulted in a momentum shift, and that's why Dallas won. This is the last play of the game in the Dallas Lions game. You guys probably watched it, those of you who are sports fans. Take a look and listen to this.
For the first time in NFL history, a game might get overturned by the commissioner, Roger Goodell. According to Rule 17, Section 2, the NFL commissioner has the ability to overturn a game if they deem it extraordinarily unfair. This is the last play of the game where the Lions decided to go for a 2-point conversion, and when they did it, well, they succeeded. But then, like 45 seconds later, the refs throw a flag and said that receiver was ineligible. But in this clip, you can clearly see him go up to the ref and tell him, hey, I'm an eligible receiver. The only question I have is, do you think it was a fair game, or should it be overturned? For the first...
I would say it should be overturned, Pete.
All the evidence is there, John. All the evidence is there. The right guy went over there. It's not the guy they said that went over there, a guy who's an interior lineman, a guard. It was not him. It was 68, who because of his number, he's got to put out there, he's got to go over, and he's got to talk to the guy and say it. And by the way, they start at the beginning of the game. They always give them a lot of these various things that they're going to do throughout the game, right? And one of them is, well, if we go for some sort of a 2-point conversion, we might do this play. Okay, great. Well, the guy went over to the ref, clearly, the video was there, and said, what else did he go over there to say, hey, how's your kid doing? I mean, no. He went over there to say, I'm going to be eligible here. And they throw him the ball, he catches the ball, and then they claim that the guy never reported. And you could see it by that video that he clearly walks over to the ref. So if you want to talk about no-brainers, this one seems like it, John. But I'll tell you, with Roger Goodell, I don't know.
Might be a no-brainer on the Roger Goodell side of that question, Pete.
Right.
By the way, that clip courtesy of Ryan Telfer Trades. That's RyanTelfer Trades. And he nails it. And I've seen some others and heard some others, Pete, that weren't just quite as good as Ryan's here, where they basically describe or where you can hear the crowd through the mic and everything as the guy comes up to the official. 70 checking in, sir. 68 checking in, sir. That's all they got to do. They don't have to say, I might catch a pass. They're saying, I'm an ineligible number, but I'm going to be playing at the end of the line of scrimmage, so I'm an eligible receiver. Yeah. That's all I got to do. Anyway.
It is amazing. All right, let's jump into some of the sports, John, but that is a great topic, and it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how Tepper reacts to this whole thing as well, because Tepper reacted pretty poorly to something else recently, John. So yeah, for those that don't know who David Tepper is, he is the owner of the Carolina Panthers. He's probably one of the most brilliant and most successful businessmen maybe of all time, right, John? I mean, the guy's only worth $20 billion. Yep, that's what his net worth is, $20 billion. He owns the Carolina Panthers. Bought him a couple of years ago. The problem is he doesn't realize that his forte in life, where he made his money, is in the market. Now, it's great to own a team, but John, he's a little bit too hands-on, right? I mean, last year he decided, hey, you know what? We need a different quarterback than what we've got. We're going to go out and we're going to get Bryce Young, despite the fact that he's smaller than most high school quarterbacks. Even though he was great at Alabama, he was not really the guy who he should have gone after. But he made this monstrous trade to go get him. And by the way, the other day, John, was pretty daggone interesting because at the game against Jacksonville, he lost his cookies, and this might be a Roger Goodell thing. I think they've already actually fined him $300,000 because he took his drink and threw it on some Jacksonville fans that he was mad at. So another problem meeting him. So he's too involved in the game, but then emotionally, he might be emotionally a little bit too involved in the game. I've never heard in my life, John, about an owner throwing something at a fan. I mean, that's just not something that should or does happen. But the $300,000, here's how much that's going to affect him. It's 1% of 1% of his $20 billion. So it's not going to really hurt him a whole lot. If you just go with your standard guy in life who's walking down the street, it's the equivalent of a $2 fine. They're basically just saying, hey, look, give us a little something here. So his $300,000 for him is a little bit of a different story. But John, what do you think the Bears are going to do? Because now that Carolina, who stinks, has finished themselves off to this point where they've got so few wins, it looks like the Bears are the guys that are locked in for the first pick. Who do you take with the first pick? Please don't tell me it's Caleb Williams, because there's no way that guy's any good. Good.
No.
And do you even have to go to a quarterback, or do you trade it, or what do you think you do with it? If you're the Bears GM right now, what do you want to do?
Well, like you and I said yesterday, Pete, Caleb Williams might be a great kid. He's small-ish. He might not be a full 6'1", might be even under 6. We'll have to see. Might be wearing some, lifts in those shoes. But he had, performed very well at Oklahoma, followed Lincoln Riley to USC. But again, Lincoln Riley is apparently pretty good in terms of recruiting offense, but hasn't had a defense anywhere he's been. And that's why they lost to Utah last year. They lost to Tulane last year. And then this year, they couldn't get by Utah again, Pete, and they went, 1 for 6, in the last 6 games of the year. So they totally just fell apart. And some of that has to fall on, unfortunately, Caleb Williams. So you're looking for a winner. He's a good kid, a lot of talent, but no. I would, if I were Bears, Pete, I would keep Justin Fields, get him a real quarterback coach, and pick up either a great offensive lineman or a great wide receiver. And there's a lot of both, as usual. And Michigan has a lot of both, by the way. And by the way, Pete, that Michigan team is just loaded.
Yeah.
I mean, speed like I haven't seen in a Big Ten team before. Size, until this game, they don't make mistakes. That freshman on the punt return, that's a mistake, obviously. When they roll the ball back to the kicker for, a field goal, yeah, that's a mistake. Michigan hadn't been making those until that game, but there's a lot of pressure playing in the semifinal for the national championship. Anyway, to your point, though, no, I would not take him. I've heard a lot of chatter, Pete, about the Bears trading Fields to the Vikings, to your Vikings. And the Vikings would love to get that guy because then they don't have to spend all that money on Cousins. Dobbs and Mullen are not the answer either, in my opinion, Pete. So I'd rather have Fields if they could get him. And then the Bears, loaded with first and second round picks for the next several years, thanks to David Tepper's idiocy, could really build a team for the decade, I think. If they do it.
I think for me, John, my money, if I were the GM for the Bears, I would absolutely be sitting there saying, I'm going after a quarterback and wait till guys offer me something just enough to take a couple draft picks down and do my picks there. I don't know that I want to get rid of Justin Fields. I really love that kid. I think he's athletic as all get out. I think he got a lot better this year. I think also that I don't know if he fits with the Vikings is the only problem. Kevin O'Connell's kind of that guy who's basically always coached the big, stiff, typical drop-back quarterbacks, not the running quarterbacks. So I don't know if that meshes well or not. And that was something with Dobbs that was part of an issue as well, I think. So it'd be interesting. I would love it for the Vikings. I just don't think that they would do that. But maybe they would. Who knows? I mean, they've done a lot of interesting things. So that makes that whole process. It's going to be a lot of conversations about what quarterback goes where and whether it's Penix or whether it's Bo Nix or whomever. It should be pretty fun, and it's going to be a lot of fun. If you got up there and you've got all the different variables that go into this whole thing until we get to the actual draft, and then we'll find out. But I think it'll be a lot of fun. John, how about this transfer portal? I just wanted to jump on this for 1 second because last year, all the talk in the transfer portal was, well, Deion Sanders and what he's doing. And by the way, right now they're number 2 on the transfer portal in terms of the success of getting high-level people that were considered to be absolute blue chippers, 4 stars, whatever you want to call them. And he's still there. He's number 2 right now, but number 1 is Ole Miss. And I'll tell you what, Kiffin is a heck of a coach. He proved it out in this year in how they played, I think, the talent levels that they've got. But, John, right now, he picked up so far the number 1 player in the country who was a defensive end who was at Texas A&M when Texas A&M was getting all those players, over there with NIL and this and that. Walter Nolan. They got another kid out of Florida who's a 5-star. Got another kid out of Tennessee, 5-star defensive guy. You got a 4-star wide receiver out of South Carolina as well. So it looks to me like Lane Kiffin has kind of figured out, you know what, we're going to go to the portal this year, and we're going to get a lot more aggressive than last year, and we're going to finally beat Alabama, and we're going to beat Georgia, and we're going to beat whoever. And I'm not saying they will, but they got a better opportunity when they get these big studs out there and they can get enough out there. They had a great year. He is a guy who has proven out so far, to me at least, that he can make players a lot better. There are some coaches that just coach. I think he makes a lot of players even better than they were, and that's why those guys, I think, are going over to Ole Miss right now. So Lane Kiffin is getting guys that are going to be in the NFL and being stars in the NFL. Oh, by the way, the culture must be good there, John. Jackson Dart, his starting quarterback all year, he played in the bowl game. He didn't walk out like everybody else and say, nah, I don't want to get hurt in this bowl game. The kid played in the bowl game. So that says a lot about the culture that he's built there as well at Ole Miss.
Well, there's a wide receiver, Pete, who's got 4 years of eligibility. We both probably don't think he'll use them. But there's a wide receiver, 6'1", 180, Jaylen Brown at LSU that just declared for the portal. Wow. So he didn't do it right away, but based on him seeing other people coming into LSU, he's like, well, maybe I better go somewhere else. He was a freshman, of course, but he's got 4 years of eligibility left. The kid's a phenom. He's a 4-star recruit. And somebody will get that guy. We don't know who yet, but somebody will get him. And guys like that can make the difference. And you look at Justin Fields, Pete, he started at Georgia before he went up to Ohio State. And it's not like he did crappy at Georgia. He put up 45 points, I think, in the first time he played as a true freshman at Georgia. But he was playing behind a really good kid, Jake Fromm or something like that, Pete. That he was playing behind. But he got to play when some injuries came up and so forth. And then he transferred through the portal to Ohio State. I think a lot of these kids do not finish where they start. And that's everybody from your buddy with Cincinnati Bengals to, that started at Ohio State and then transferred down to LSU. I don't think just because you started a school these days, you're going to finish there. I'd say, in fact, it's probably maybe 60-40 that you're not going to stay, especially if you're a star.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's unlikely that you're going to stay because not only that, John, but you're jumping also for opportunity, but also in some cases money. The NIL money's better over here than it is over here. So these guys are taking advantage of that, and you can't blame them. I think they need to fix a lot of this stuff, but there's a lot that goes into it. By the way, first 2 days, January 1st and January 2nd, 35 players entered the portal. So it gives you a little idea. This is not over. These guys are ready to roll, man. They're looking for a new home and maybe more, like I just said, more NIL money. So it's going to be interesting. College football is a lot different than the college football you and I played, John. I can tell you that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember when it was a big deal that Elway made $100,000, Pete, playing baseball for the Yankees while he was at Stanford. And I didn't agree with that at all. Because it's like, well, you're not supposed to be able to be paid. And they're like, well, he can't play baseball in college anymore. Huh? But anyway, it's a lot different now. It's like 100 times different than that. All right. Thanks for joining us, folks. We hope you enjoyed the show. We will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Remember, you can always get that free book, It's Not an Option, at itsnotanoption.com. So check it out. Go over to itsnotanoption.com, and we'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock.